Thank you so much. And it's just, I'm just overwhelmed by how many of you have come out today, and thank you for that. And thank you, Marie, for your kind introduction, too. It is a weird day today, and I was actually going to speak about fear. So, but it's a different kind of fear than what is going on today in Ottawa. I wanted to start with a question to find out how many of you have, how many of you would call yourselves impulsive? All of you, or most of you. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. I think impulsivity is really a good trait to have, and having a degree of it has been certainly good for me, even though I came to it rather late in life. I used to be one of those cautious and serious types, and then I finally got fed up with doing things that other people wanted me to do, and rather than doing what I needed to do to feel fulfilled and also engaged in with life. So I sort of got out of my mouse phase, I guess, and then embarked on a different kind of a life. The 4 memoirs I've written are linked by a common theme of stepping off the track and facing fears that arise when you do embrace that sort of impulsive side of your character. The Peely Project was about stepping away from career stability in order to live on a remote island, and an island that I had sort of fallen in love with. I'm at a loss to explain what my attraction to Peely Island is, because it was, if you went to visit it, if any of you have seen it, it's absolutely flat, and it's completely unremarkable. But a wild side of myself was arising at the time, and I just felt that I felt called to be there. With what the psychic told the pilgrim, I impulsively set off on an 800-kilometer journey, a walk across Spain. And this was purely based on a random conversation that I had with an airline steward. I didn't once consider the fact that I hate camping, that I had never been for a long walk. I couldn't even really place Spain on a map, to be honest with you, but I went anyway. And I think that's the sort of call that you get when you just know in your heart that that you're meant to do something. And sometimes it's good not to think things too clearly and not to think too hard about what your heart is telling you. It was a tough hike, physically and emotionally. And when I lost my group, I thought of actually bailing on the whole thing and throwing in the towel. I just couldn't imagine finishing it on my own. But every time I wanted to stop, somebody would come up and ask me if I would walk with them. And you can't say no. So I said, oh, okay, I'll do it one more time. And each time at the end of each day, I went, okay, now I'm seriously going to quit. And then somebody else would come, and then somebody else. And that's what propelled me on. And sometimes it is those actions of other people that sort of bring us along on the journey, that sort of push us forward. And as it turned out, I did lose the group that I was with initially, but I found other people and I met strangers, and 2 of them, one of them has become a really good friend, and the other one became my husband. So they both rather changed my life. There was a degree of fear on the continent. I don't know what was more fearful, traveling with my mother or discovering that I was a lot like her. I had hoped it would be a healing trip, and yet I was carrying all this emotional baggage, and I was weighed down with wondering why she and I never got along. But the journey produced an epiphany, an unexpected epiphany, and that forced a change in attitude in me. So you never know when you will find inspiration and wisdom. When I kind of dithered over writing when there were nuns. I had decided to stop writing altogether, as a matter of fact, because I had decided that I was going to go off and be a nun, and I was going to devote my life to God, and I was not going to write anymore. But the experience was so unusual, and I was desperate for people to know about nuns and monks, and to sort of give them, to give nuns and monks some positive press in a way, because they've certainly had their share of bad press. And also because I kind of saw them becoming extinct, and I wanted people to know about them before that happened. Of the 4 journeys that I've written about, this one scared me the most. And it was because I think religious life and exploring religious life and even anything to do with the spiritual is very frightening, because it isn't anything that we can pin to, and everybody has a different experience. So it was different, and I think because religious life is so different from secular life as well, that it destabilizes you. One of the things that was difficult for me to get used to was silence, and silence is sort of a disturbance to those of us who live in with nonstop sound all around. Silence has its own volume and its moods and its impact, and you have to grow into it, because silence can be overwhelming. I adjusted to it eventually, and to the regular toll of bells and to all the sounds associated with a convent. But it was always humorous to see how others reacted to it. And one of the people was a woman who I met called Mita. Well, that was the name I gave her anyway. I wasn't going to give her real name. And I met Mita when I was at Quor Abbey on the Isle of Wight, and it seemed like the whole convent had cleared out. There were only 8 monks there to begin with, and it was just a huge place. But they took in guests, but most of the guests sort of had left, and so I found myself with a pretty empty place to be. But just as I resigned myself to being the sole guest at Quor Abbey for the last few days of my stay, a new one showed up. Her name was Mita, an artist who lived on the Isle of Wight. We bumped into one another in the guest lounge, and she was so interesting and entertaining. It was as if we had known each other for ages, that we pulled up a couple of chairs and chatted freely until supper, ignoring the bells as they tolled successive offices. Mita obviously had not received the memo about meals being conducted in silence, or if she had, she ignored it. She did not seem familiar with the term indoor voice either. I had to be the killjoy and tell her to button it. She paid me no heed, not even when the monks were saying grace. I felt like the head librarian constantly saying, shh. When Father Sting brought in our food, Mita pounced on him and flirtatiously tried to engage him in conversation. He responded in a slightly baffled but polite way and smiled and quickly retreated. "He's cute," said Mita as she dug into her food with gusto. I winced, hoping that Father Sting hadn't heard the comment. "Has he been serving you all week? Makes you wonder why they're monks, doesn't it? I mean, what a waste of a man." She tore apart a piece of bread. "Well, they have given themselves to serve Christ, so is that a waste?" I said. Mita's mouth dropped open as she gave me a look of disbelief that said, "Are you shitting me? Are you even female?" I tried to keep silence at the table, but Mita would have none of it. I was sure Father Nicholas would be storming in any minute to tell us both off. The next morning, well past lauds, she staggered into the breakfast room wearing fluffy slippers the size of dusters. "Did you go out last night?" I asked. She looked as if she had consumed twice her weight in alcohol. "Bloody bells kept me up all night," she yawned, rubbing her heavy, sleep-deprived eyes. "Surely you heard them." "Nope, not one." "You must be a really sound sleeper," she said, pouring a coffee, or deaf. With a mug in hand, she padded back to bed. I stayed in my room all day. The wind was still ferocious, and it made reading, praying, and concentrating all but impossible. I was packing my bags in preparation for my departure from Quor the next day when there was a knock at my door. It was Mita. She had her coat on. Her suitcase sat on the floor beside her like a loyal pet. "I'm leaving," she said. "I just wanted to say goodbye." "But you just arrived." "I can't sleep here. The silence is driving me crazy. My husband's on his way to pick me up." We hugged goodbye. I was extremely sad to see her go. Despite her incessant yakking, her spirit had given me a boost, and I adored her company. "I was thinking about what you told me about your journey to explore being a nun," she said. "Read Kings 1. It's about Elijah in the wilderness when he was fleeing from Jezebel. Maybe you're in your own desert right now, fleeing from something. Just know that God is with you, and he'll get you through this. Have faith." And then she was gone, and it suddenly felt lonely and cold once more. The silence had a profound impact on me, and on how I coped with the memory of a trauma that dogged me throughout my convent journey. When it comes to trauma, we are always encouraged to talk it out, to seek professional help, to invoke coping strategies. So it was a surprise to find out how effective not doing any of those things were. In the seemingly uncomfortable, awkward silence of a convent, I let God be my therapist. And I can confirm that he's very good. He's effective, available, and very inexpensive. I didn't become a nun, but it was an extraordinary privilege to try and a profound experience. We are often led on journeys, not to get something or to become something, but to learn something. And that's what this journey was about. The deeper we journey into ourselves, the messier it gets. Life is messy. And it can be scary. But we should never stop exploring what fires our soul. We should never let fear hold us back. Thank you.